Hello, welcome to a weekly reading vlog. It's the first week of September. I'm reading too many things already. I read Slaying the Vampire Conqueror this week, which was absolutely fire. So good. And then I read The Serpent and the Wings of Night afterward, which was fucking transcendent. So much fun. I think the most fun I've had reading fantasy romance since I read acotar. I feel like my necklace is necklacing. I feel like since I finished the Sarah J Maas books, I've like been in a little bit of a slump, and I started The Serpent and the Wings of Night and was really unconvinced by the beginning, because I think in the beginning Araya just seems so stereotypical. So like stereotypical badass female character that I was like, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can handle another Selena Sardothian. As much as I love her by the end, you know, it's a hard road to get there, and I was just like, I don't think I can do it. But man, Carissa Broadbent like fucks that shit up. It is the formula, but it is like the formula done so well that like you don't even care that it's the formula. But so I also am reading a couple other things. My husband bought me this book. This was like for our anniversary, we both went to Barnes & Noble and we picked out a book for each other, and this is the book that he picked out for me, and I'm like 2/3 the way through almost. I've been mainly listening to the audiobook of this, which I don't know who the narrator is, but the fucking audiobook narrator of this book is incredible. I don't like audiobooks. My primary issue with audiobooks is that like most of the time I think they make the characters sound so annoying, and I want like nothing to do with them. Like books that I like, characters that I like, I will then hear in the audiobook and be like, if I just listened to the audiobook, I would have hated this book. But this guy, his voices are good, his narration is just perfect. I don't know. The Black Prism, this is Brent Weeks, who always seemed like a kind of fantasy writer that was for the dads, but there's color magic in this book, and the fucking the politics and the scheming and the fucking twists and turns of this, I'm thoroughly entertained. And then I've had this book for a while, and I don't ever read nonfiction, and so I'm like trying to get myself to read something that's not a fantasy book. So this is What My Bones Know, which is a memoir of healing from complex trauma. I'm like not that far into it. I got through the first part, which is basically like the history, and so she hasn't really gotten into like what the actual book I think is about, which is like her healing process. I have someone really close to me who has CPTSD, and I've heard really good things about this book. And then speaking of acotar, I read all of acotar on my Kindle, and then I told myself I wasn't going to buy the books physically until I made a plan basically. This was a while ago, but I made a plan, which was that like you can get the physical books, but you have to get the hardcovers, and you have to get them one at a time, and that you're going to use this as an excuse to reread them. So you can annotate them, underline them, and then you can buy the next one. And then once I've reread and annotated all of them, I think I'm going to get custom covers for them. So this is a long con project, but right now I am 143 pages into A Court of Thorns and Roses. We've gotten nowhere so far. Feyre is just flirting with the idea of even liking Tamlin right now, which like goddamn is a little bit hard, but it is really interesting reading, and I'm like picking up all kinds of stuff. I'm like, he was trying to warn you. Alright, I thought I'd just do a little update. It's Friday morning. I read like 45 pages of What My Bones Know this morning, which I'm very proud of myself for. Reading a real nonfiction book. So the main thing I've been reading though, or the thing that I started last night, we're exploring the orc canon, and these always get recommended to me, is Her Orc King by Zoe Ashwood, which I have put off reading because they seem bad, and it is bad. I'm like 56% of the way through it. Again, not a real book. Just like the Ruby Dixon one, not a real book. It is a smut book that kind of has a plot. But why do the monster romances always have to have the silliest plots possible? Like right now the whole thing is like she wants to like make period underwear for the townsfolk in like the nearest town, because that's something that the orcs do. It's like such a like annoying female fantasy of like the men are so horrible on their periods, but the orcs are so kind and know how to take care of women when they're menstruating and let them rest. And it's the first time I've ever been able to lie in bed. I'm just not enjoying it. I don't like this type of book, really. That's why orcs weren't, it's like I can't impress enough to people how much of like real books they are. Like they have real plots. This book does not have a real plot. So yeah, not really vibing with that. My first appointment this morning canceled on me. So now I have some extra time, but I think I'm still gonna go in just as early and catch up on stuff and probably listen to the Black Prism audiobook while I do it. Because what the fuck is happening in that book? Also, so my husband, like all good millennial husbands, has a podcast, and so he was recording his podcast last night, and it ended up taking way longer than expected. So I was like, and he was doing it in the living room, so I was kind of like stuck in our bedroom for a couple hours. So I got a lot more of Acotar reread. That's what I decided I wanted to do with my, I don't know what even the word is, my imprisonment. So I got to page like 200 in Acotar, which I'm reading it, you know, pretty slowly and like highlighting, and got to the part where she meets Reese for the first time, and there's so many good fucking lines in that first scene when they meet at Fire Night that like you just don't know the first time you read it. Yeah, I've been really enjoying the reread. I mean, I love Acotar, and I really like the first book, and it's starting, you know, things are starting to get interesting. There's actually some romance building now. He took her to the gallery and gave her paint. I don't care that the painting thing is cringe. It gets me every time. Him writing the poems, like they were like, there was no way it was gonna work. Like they were both like too traumatized for one another. But like there were some really precious moments between Tamlin and Feyre. Like there really are. And even like the line when Tamlin is like, when he's first telling her about how his family's like participation in the war and like that his family had slaves, and he has a line where he's like, you know, against slavery and oppression or whatever, like I will always fight, like regardless of who the victim is or regardless of who I'm fighting for. And I was like, say one thing, say Tamlin kept his fucking word on that. Yesterday I finished the Black Bear Clan, the first book, Her Orc King, and I don't know why I'm like this, but I feel like generally I always feel like I need to give an author 2 chances. Like I will feel guilty and it will like consume my brain space if I don't give them multiple chances. So yesterday I decided I was gonna read the second one too, because they're so short, you can read them so quickly. Once I got to the point in my evening where I was like, I'm not gonna be I'm too sleepy to be good company right now. I'm just gonna go hang out and read the rest of this book, and stayed up probably too late, but it was good. It was good that I stayed up too late because it meant that I didn't wake up at 5 in the morning on a Saturday. The second one was better than the first one. The second one was actually like a significant improvement from the first one. Like in the first one, like she is bought from a slave market by the orcs, taken there, and then like they fuck like immediately. This one had more of a plot. But the writing is just really not it. I'm sorry to Zoe Ashwood. Part of me feels like she's probably entirely capable of writing at a higher level than this, and this is just kind of like the expectation for the genre, because this is just like a very typical like serious, not taking itself seriously at all monster romance series, clearly, which is just really not my vibe. There are some things about these books that I really don't like, and this isn't really a criticism of these books, it's a criticism of the genre. I don't like when the girl is a virgin and like to the point where she's like doesn't even know what a penis is, and That's been a thing in like both of these books and also in the Half-Orcs Maiden Bride. And I don't get what's supposed to be like intriguing, or I don't know if it's supposed to be funny, of like, what does that even mean? What are you doing? You're putting your mouth on my pussy? Like, I don't. The way my brain works is that like, even if I don't have a kink, I want to be able to at least like logically break down what it would be about that would be satisfying. And for a woman reading a book about another woman, I don't. But it's such a common trope. It happens so often. They're just not. They're not. If you like Ice Planet Barbarian though, like you probably would like these. I need to get ready to go run some errands and also update you guys on how the reading has been going. So I'm gonna do that all at the same time. So I don't know if you guys are like this, but I find that like if I'm reading a fantasy book and I'm taking it kind of slowly, like once I get to a certain page mark, I can no longer take it slowly. And that was what happened yesterday basically with the Black Prism. I was just getting like too insane, and I was just like, I know I have to finish this book. It's one of the only times I think ever in my entire life that I've been kind of sad that I didn't have the audiobook. I didn't have time to finish it by listening to the audiobook. I mean, like I have time obviously, like I could have not finished it yesterday, but I knew that I was going to get through it faster and actually be able to finish it yesterday if I just read it. So I did. I finished the Black Prism yesterday. So it's Lightbringer book 1 by Brent Weeks, and I really enjoyed it. Like it's definitely not like a 5-star, but it's also like the first book in a fantasy series, and like I feel like a series has to be like really exceptional for the first book to be a 5-star, because there's just like so much setup. But I think those books are really cool and I'm really interested to keep going. I do feel like Brent Weeks is like, oh my god, like here for the entertainment. Like he loves a fucking plot twist and some drama. Like those books are not boring. Like there are several things that happened towards the end of that book that I was just like, what the fuck? So I immediately used my September Audible credit to get the audiobook for the next one because I really enjoy listening to these on audiobook. So yeah, that's exciting. And it's also exciting because Lightbringer is a completed series. So there will be no waiting for me. I can just read, I think there's 6 of them. I can just read all 6, which is a stunning prospect. I just think like the magic system is so cool, like the drafting. And I heard somebody say, I don't know how much I've explained what the book is actually about. I may not include this if I've already said it, but essentially like the magic users in the world are called drafters, and they have the ability to draft colors. So most people can only draft one color, but like each color has different properties, and they draft or they make something called luxin, which is a material in whatever color it is that they are able to draft, and they can like make things out of it. So they can build things, they can make weapons out of it. Prism is basically the emperor, is basically like the most powerful drafter, and he's able to split light in any color at any moment. And it's revealed at the beginning of the book that he is the father of our main character, that our main character Kip is his bastard. And so, you know, then shit ensues from there, especially because, you know, Kip is this like chubby, bumbling kind of, you know, he's a 15-year-old boy, but he's not, and he's like a real 15-year-old boy. He's not like an impressive 15-year-old boy. I really enjoyed it, and I think that it had some like really wonderful characters. Like Gavin, the Prism, our main character, one of our main characters, is such a lovable character. And then like all the people that he has around him, like I especially really loved Corvin Danibus. Was just such a wonderful character, and Iron Fist was like absolutely fantastic, and just in general, like I think the writing is pretty good. There were definitely some like cringe moments, or some things where it was like, god, that was like gross for no reason, or why did you have to like go there? But I I don't know if other people feel this way. I just feel like when you're writing a fantasy series written by a man, there are certain things that you just have to accept. You know? It's like, to me, it's like the fact that like without fail, Joe Abercrombie uses the word turd unnecessarily in every single one of his books. Like I wait for it. I wait for it in every book. I can't remember what it was. There was one book where I got to page like 300 before he used the word turd, and I was like so excited. I was like, he's finally breaking the cycle, and then he used it. It's like he can't fucking help himself. None of it was like so distracting that it like really took away from the quality of the book. And then this morning, I spent more time than I was planning to, but this morning I finished my reread of A Court of Thorns and Roses and finished underlining and tabbing and writing my little notes, which really, I'm not a big note writer. Mainly, most of my notes are just writing Rhysand when he was, you know, playing his role and saying some just like really awful things. But yeah, I really enjoyed the reread. It obviously was like less tense, less like, oh my god, what's gonna happen, though most of that book is set up anyways. But it was just like, it was really interesting, like seeing all of Tamlin's actions through the perspective of like what you know was gonna happen. This is all gonna be spoilers what I'm about to say, so if you don't want acotar spoilers, skip ahead. Because you can really see like so much of what I highlighted was moments where like he shunned Feyre or shunned Lucian and like took responsibility like fully on himself, and like very much had this like martyr complex, which you know, right? You like, as the books go on and like you understand more of what's going on, like it's not like that's like confusing, but rereading the passages, it's like, oh yeah, like it was really like loud and clear. Like it totally makes fucking sense that that's how this all went down. And it's not even like personal to Feyre like at all. It's just like, that's just who Tamlin is. And I think that in a lot of ways like made me have a lot more empathy for Tamlin, because I think it really feels like betrayal when you read it. And I think it felt like, which is good because it feels like betrayal to Feyre, and so you're like having the same experience of the character, which I think usually is good when you're reading a series, especially for the first time. But yeah, it just made me feel kind of sad for him more than anything. I was also impressed in my second reread just how not annoying Feyre is. It's so hard to write like a strong female character in a, I mean, I know acotar like isn't technically young adult, but its vibes are really young adulty, who isn't, and just in fantasy romance in general, I should say, who's not annoying. And Feyre, I think like rides the line really well. I think the biggest difference in the reread was just like how, I mean, both difficult it was, but also then like how much more like impressive it was, or like maybe respect him as a character. But like to watch Rhysand, or to read, I guess I'm not watching, but to read Rhysand like playing that character of Amarantha's whore, like, because the first time you read it, you don't know, like you are getting these like glimpses over time of like, maybe this guy isn't what Tamlin and Lucian say he is. But rereading it, it's like, oh my god, fucking Rhysand, poor little fucking Rhysand, like just keeping it together the best that he can. And so it like makes so much more sense when after the second trial he like bursts into Feyre's like cell and is like, I fucking hate this, and just like wants to like unload and like talk to her. Yeah, the whole time I was like, oh my goodness. And when he has to say goodbye to her, when he like lets her leave with Tamlin, I mean, like he doesn't have a choice. It's not like, you know, it's not the kind of like person that he is to do anything but let her go. But, and he like, the ending was so much more intense, and I'm just like in it. Like my whole plan was like, oh, this will be like a fun kind of like, here or there we'll like reread these, and then I'm like, well, now I want to read A Court of Mist and Fury, which, you know, Makes sense. A Court of Mist and Fury is like one of my favorite books ever. I've made no more progress in What My Bones Know. I thought earlier, I was like, maybe I'll try listening to the audiobook of that because it's on Spotify, and it was just not it. The reason I'm leaving the house, one is to go buy A Court of Mist and Fury and get a coffee, which I think will be wonderful. And then also, I really want to go to Trader Joe's. And then the dumbest of all my reasons for leaving the house is that Bath and Body Works is having like a $12.95 sale on their 3-wick candles. So I want to go smell them in person. We're gonna read Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King. Obviously this is the third book, this is not the first one. And one of my greatest shames in life is that I don't really like Lord of the Rings. I like the movies, but like God does it not make me want to like vomit thinking that I have to claim that I like the Lord of the Rings movies more than the books. I don't know, it just doesn't sit well with me. And I also, you know, I think this is not an uncommon thing. I really don't like having partially read series, and I read The Hobbit and the first 2 a year ago, and I have not picked this one up. It's funny, this is the set that I have, or I don't have the first one yet, but I've thrifted the third one and the second one with these movie covers, and I just love them. I think these movie covers look so sick. Like this is my preferred copy of Lord of the Rings. My husband makes fun of me for every time he sees them, but I love them, especially because like, hello, Viggo Mortensen is Aragorn. Anyways, I am trying to use that book as my incentive to get work done right now. If you write reports for 30 minutes, then you can read for 10 minutes. That's what I'm trying to do. Also, this is a quiz. If you see me drinking out of this mug, what comes to mind? Do you think that it's just funny because it says Big Boss, or do you know who Big Boss is? Because I just feel like nobody gets this mug. And it's not like, I'm gonna give you the answer. It's not like Metal Gear Solid branded merchandise, but it's one of my favorite things I've ever found at the thrift store. I'm on page 122 of this bad boy now, so like a third of the way through it. Not even, but close to a third. All I have to say is it's anti-orc propaganda. No, I'm enjoying this one more than I enjoyed the last two. Got some really sick moments. I don't think Lord of the Rings is spoilable, but the moment when Éowyn kills the Ringwraith and Mary like helps her, it was so good. But I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like, it's such a good story that is not that pleasant to actually read. It's like the Bible or something. Slowly but surely gonna work on this little beast. I really am enjoying the audiobook actually. I do kind of feel like it's a much nicer book to listen to than it is to read, just because the prose is like so literary, like so poetic, that it like you kind of like can get swamped up in it. I don't even know the right words to say, but when you hear it spoken, it's like reading Shakespeare or something, you know. It's like when you hear it spoken, it's like, oh yeah, I get that. Oh my fucking god, y'all. So I am still reading Lord of the Rings. Slowly but surely making my way through Lord of the Rings, but I just need a fun, spicy book to read sometimes. It is like what brings me joy unlike anything else in this world. And now that like I've finished my reread of Orcs Form, there's like this gaping hole in my heart, this gaping hole in my life. And I was kind of desperately trying to find something to fill the void, and holy shit, did I find something. This book is not for everybody. It's a duet or whatever, duology. These books are extremely spicy. And the complaint that I've seen for them is that there's a lot of like non-consensual BDSM, but again, like this is a book, not a dungeon. I don't want to like go through the shit on my Kindle to get the cover for the first one, but it is The Court of Ravens duology by Liv Zander. Y'all, I have not been this obsessed with a book. I'm fucking kicking my feet. I'm giggling, I'm quaking. These books are everything. So basically this is a dark romance duology that focuses on a girl who is like the daughter of a lord in a kingdom where they are at war with the ravens, which I actually think that this is like really interesting. They're shifters, but they're raven shifters, and so they have like dark shadow magic, and they shift into what they call an unkindness of ravens, which is really interesting. So they don't just shift into like one raven, they shift into like 5, and each raven kind of holds like a different part of their magic or their personhood. Like one of their ravens is responsible, or is the one that allows them to shift back into a human. One of their raven holds their gift or their magic. One of their ravens holds like their bond. And it's also, there's also fated mates. The ravens have fated mates, and so one of their ravens is the one that like can be mated. So if one of your ravens dies, like you can still live, but part of you essentially will be gone. And so the humans and the ravens have been at war since, I think, for like 20 years or something. And so we follow this girl who is the daughter of one of the lords who has like one of the biggest armies in the kingdom, in the human kingdom, and hates the ravens. It's like the most militarily like violent against the ravens. And she is betrothed. So she's betrothed to the prince of the human kingdom, and on her journey there to marry him, her carriage is attacked, the town where she is attacked, and she is captured by 2 ravens, one of whom is the Prince of Shadows, Malir, who is a super traumatized, fucked up, violent guy who wants to basically like possess her, like wants to hurt her, but in a way that maybe both of them enjoy. And then his best friend, Sabian, is basically charged with protecting her from Malir, because there's like different kinds of like, the ravens have different kinds of gifts. So there's fates who can see the future and the past, and then there's weavers who can like make things, and then there are pathfinders who are like trackers and have really heightened senses, and then there's death weavers who have shadow magic that like hurts people. Essentially they can like weave shadows to like cause destruction, and then there's voids who take in shadow magic. And so one of the fates, their like general in their army, had a vision in which he saw this girl who, her name is like Galantia or Galantia. I don't know. The names in this book are absurd. We have Galantia as our main character, Malir, which Malir, it's not a name, and then Sabian. Like they're just, and I'm assuming that I'm saying those right. I spent so much time as I was reading this book trying to work out what's the most like likely way that you would pronounce these names. But the main general in their army has a vision of Galantia, and so they're like, clearly she's important somehow to this war and to us winning against the humans, so we need to protect her, and specifically we need to protect her from Malir. And so Sabian takes it upon himself. Sabian has this like protector complex because of some of his past trauma. Malir is like really violent and angry because of his past trauma, and so the book really is the like interplay between the 3 of them. If there's anything I've discovered that I like, it is the 2 men, one girl, especially when it's like one of the men is really like, so both of my favorite Orcsworn books are like this. Like one of the men is really like caring and takes care of the girl, and I think this is like this seems to be generally what the MMF or MFM genre. It's not really a genre, I don't know, but when books have that, it tends to be like that, where it's like one is kind of the protector and one is the like, and the other is the one who, you know, like wants to be in charge or is a little bit meaner, a little bit, you know, whatever. So yeah, there's a lot of like non-consensual but kind of consensual like sexual stuff that happens. A lot of like body mutilation thing that I love. So it's all clearly building up because there is like, there's a lot of sex, but there's also like a real story in this book, and it's all very clearly building up to like the twist is not hard to guess. It was so obvious from the very beginning what both of the twists are, but she makes you wait so long for it, and then when it finally fucking happens, it is like everything. I was literally screaming. Even though I knew that that was what was gonna happen, and I even last night as I was reading it, I was like, if the thing that I think is the twist is not the twist, I'm gonna be devastated, because I was so sure. I was so sad, and of course it was. Both of the things were. But the first main one, she basically like drops on like the very last page of the first book. I feel like that's kind of a spoiler, but she really makes you wait for it. And it's really satisfying. But yeah, these books are like crack, and the writing is actually, I think, pretty good. There's definitely some lines where I'm like, we could have worked through that. And some of the lines, especially of the dialogue, don't really feel like real dialogue, but it's not like a consistent thing through the entire book. And in this genre, and for how spicy it is, I think, like superbly written, really good. And just like, this is what I love. I want a lot of spice, but I want like real world building. I want a real story. I want like, I love it. I fucking absolutely loved it. It's so good. And yeah, I'm like 60% of the way through Shadow So Cruel. And I'm gonna be so sad when it's over. I'm gonna have to reread them. Like immediately I'm gonna have to reread them. I'm fucking obsessed. As much as I truly do not want to end this video looking like this, I have to end this video because I have a good hour and a half to edit it, and my memory card is full, which means it's time. It's time to get all this fucking footage off of my camera and do something with it. I finished Shadow So Cruel yesterday. I do not think that Shadow So Cruel was as good as Feather So Vicious, but holy fucking shit. I went on Barnes & Noble and ordered them immediately. I am obsessed. Some of my favorite books that I've read this year, not because they are like high quality literature or storytelling, but honestly, like, because they are the perfect mix of fantasy and romance and smut. Like, those books they're dark fantasy romance, and they are fucking dark. Moliere is psycho, but like that psycho is the vibe around here, and I haven't really explored this genre because I just haven't really known where to start. But this series was everything. The second one is like way more plot heavy. It's like all the things that it's like building up to in the first one, where there's like a lot of focus on the relationship, goes down. And then the ending is wild. The like ending, like the very last like pages are some of the most insane pages of the entire book. So I'm like, anyways, if you like dark romance, if you like a brooding shadow daddy and non-con and dubious consent, like those things don't bug you or don't trigger shit for you, highly recommend. Can we talk about how, okay, so I put on these nails, and they literally, this is the only set I wear press-ons all the time. This is the only set I've ever had where the French tip is clearly like literally a different piece. Okay, anyways, so after I finished, what is it actually called? Court of Ravens. After I finished Court of Ravens, I was like, okay, well, Liv Xander has another duology. I should read that. And like both of the books are only 250 pages, so I can like get these out super quickly. But I also had a feeling that they weren't going to be very good because they weren't going to be as good. Like, I feel like a 250 page book is like never 5 stars. It's never everything and more. And so I started Pale Court, which is, the first book is King of Flesh and Bone. And okay, so here's the thing. I am a sucker, especially in video games. So like one of my favorite video games of all time is Diablo 3. And I love playing the Necromancer. I think aesthetically it's like so cool, like bone spear and bone armor and bone cages and all. I think it's just like sick as hell. Bone lance. I'm just gonna name Diablo 3 abilities. So anyways, I love necromancy, and technically, this isn't technically necromancy, but this is a really dark romance. At this point, they're calling him the King of Flesh and Bone, but he's basically like the god who's responsible for putting corpses to rest. He has been angered by the people of this land and is like, fuck y'all, I'm not doing my job anymore, which means that like the corpses, I think it's like every full moon, the corpses come back to life and people have to like protect themselves and, you know, take precautions to like keep their dead like in their graves so they don't like wander off and because all of them are drawn to his kingdom, the Pale Court, because they want to be put to rest. And so in her efforts to keep her husband, who's died, in the ground and safe, Ada, or Adeline, our main character, is dragged off to the Pale Court where she meets the King of Flesh and Bone, and he immediately, because like there's been no human woman in the court for like who knows how long, he immediately takes her in and like as his slave essentially, and then, you know, slowly but surely he becomes obsessed with her. And she realizes that like she has an opportunity through this relationship, despite how like abusive and horrible he is, though he like literally has control over flesh and bone. So he like has control over her flesh. So I feel it's a very smutty book. I feel like you can see how those things come together, but she realizes that she has this opportunity to potentially influence him to save her people, and like slowly over time that line between like what she's doing willingly and what he is willing her body to do shifts. He is like a straight up villain. He is like a villain with like who at some points has like a heart of gold. Like it's not like there are no cinnamon roll moments for him. He's not like so many of these books, it's like he ends up being like a total softie, or like, you know, everything is like explained, so there's like he's not actually morally reprehensible at all. And our main character in this book is actually just like kind of a bad dude, but there is like, you know, a complicated backstory to it, and he's been through some shit that like made him be that way, but he also is literally just an angry god. I did not like these nearly as much as the Court of Ravens, but I did have a really good time with them. They were really fun, and the stakes were like very high. Things were insane the whole time. So if you like dark romance, I think these are like a fun read, but like a little too insane, a little too all over the place. And the world is a lot less fleshed out like than it is in Court of Ravens, which is what I like. Like the magic system in the world is so fleshed out in A Court of Ravens, and it was very morbid, and the imagery of like corpses and death, and like his whole kingdom is literally made out of corpses. Like that's his magic, is that he can make anything out of corpses. So he like dresses her in human skin, and there's some things that are like it's morbid, which I kind of like. I was kind of into, and so I almost feel like it's like those parts of the book. It was like such an interesting concept, but it was like it's her first published work, and I just feel like she didn't fully stick the landing, but I did enjoy it. But yeah, that is everything that I read in the past week. I'm still reading What My Bones Know. I'm still reading Lord of the Rings. I've like completely fallen off my interest in reading them. I've read a lot this week. There's a lot of books going on. I didn't finish a lot of them other than these 4 that I just finished, but a lot of stuff happening. I'm gonna work on this whole reading blog thing. I'm super new at it, and I'm hoping that I'll get better at doing it over time. I'm hoping in this next one I really want to start incorporating like actually my reactions as I'm reading stuff, and not just my reactions afterwards. But thanks for coming along for the ride, and I'll see you in my next video.